everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us for today's AVST Live webinar. This is Ann Rude with AVST Marketing. Today our topic is Skype for Business. We're going to be sharing some statistics with you, and in addition we'll be talking about how AVST complements a Skype for Business implementation. Neil Butler, our Director of Sales Engineering, is our presenter today. Before I turn it over to Neil, just want to let you know a couple of things. First of all, we'll do a Plantronics giveaway for a couple of sets of headphones. We won't do that during the live session, but look for an email from me later today if you're one of those lucky winners. In addition, the slides for today's session are available for download. You can get those from the handouts area on the webinar panel, and we will also email them out after the webinar. So later today, look for the webinar follow-up email from us, which will include those slides, as well as a link to the recording. And I want to also let you know we will have time for questions, and so you're welcome to actually type those in the question box throughout the presentation, and we'll have them queued up for Neil. I'll, of course, give a reminder of that as well once Neil wraps up the slide portion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Neil.
Thank you, Ann. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming by. We always start these with just a little information on who we are. So although I know a lot of you are repeat attendees on these webinars, some people are new and they might be wondering, so why am I listening to this company? Who are they? I've never heard of them, some people say. And it's not because we've not been around. We've been around for over 35 years, and we're recognized in this industry in unified communications and unified messaging as an industry leader. We have a lot of experience, and that experience puts us in a pretty good position to start talking about what's going on, in this case particularly in the Skype for Business environment when it comes to telecommunications. We did indeed start as a small 4-port voicemail company many, many years ago, but along the way we figured out that the real fun is dealing with enterprises. Large enterprises are much more interesting. Everyone is different. They're all complex. They all have, really complex challenges. And because we're not owned by a telephone manufacturer or a network manufacturer, we are actually able to make sure that our product works across the board, and we get to go into any of these large enterprises, whether we look at these verticals or just any company in general, and make our product fit. And the way we do that is by spending a large part of our R&D money in interoperability. And we are recognized beyond a shadow of a doubt as the leader in interoperability in the UC space. There really isn't anything out there that we can't deal with. We like for the people who represent our product to be able to go into any building, pick any floor, and go in and talk about the wonderful things we can deliver without giving that list of things you have to upgrade to get there. All of our solutions work on old phone systems, old email platforms, new phone systems, new platforms, cloud, hybrid cloud, strictly enterprise deployments. We make a point of making sure that we can spend all our time talking about the solutions and not worry about spending a lot of time talking about which particular locations we could service or couldn't service. And in this case, we're going to talk about a very popular product out there for lots of reasons. Microsoft has lots of things going on in the Skype for Business world and the kind of telephony side of their business right now. And we've been watching this and participating in this for a number of years. Unlike a lot of companies that make telephony-based products, we have a different kind of focus. We basically have been running on a Windows platform for a lot of years now and spending a lot of time with Microsoft. They happen to be up here in the same area where our engineering location is. So we get to sit down with them quite regularly. And in order to really kind of maintain what we need to have that interface with Microsoft, we're one of the few people in the country that has gold certification, both in communications and messaging. So both in the Skype telephony side and the Exchange messaging side. And we've got a nice Microsoft Platform Ready designation, and that gives us a little more knowledge, I like to think, than the average kind of telephony vendor who might talk to you about the same kind of solution that we're going to talk about. There is no doubt that the movement of Skype for Business into the PBX world, into the telephony side, has been a major event for them. And while in a lot of ways it seems to be very similar to a PBX, there are certainly a lot of ways which it isn't. And we have spent the time and money investing in that. And the reason we did that is we realized years ago that every enterprise customer we talked to was doing something with Skype. They were talking about probably already had it deployed or were in the process of deploying it for instant messaging. They were looking in the fairly close future probably about expanding it into the conferencing and web support piece of it. And a lot of them were either starting to deploy or starting to put test beds out for the telephony, the Skype for Business telephony side of it. And that let us know, since this is the world we're in, that we had to make sure we stayed up with what was going on there. And we've definitely done that. If you look at these numbers, and I don't think this is news to many people, there just is a very strong interest. If you go to the highest level and look at the story of taking your traditional phone system and integrating it into the software on your network already, the other communication tools, so having everything sort of built into that Microsoft world so that from a phone call you can open up an instant messaging session, from an instant messaging session you can leave a voicemail. That really tight integration, that's at the heart of what unified communications is about, tying things together and giving more productivity, more control to the users. And everybody's interested in that. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to go out and rip out their PBXs and go to Skype for Business right away. Complicating all of this, of course, right in the middle of the kind of who provides telephony argument comes the where does it live argument, because there's a lot of interest in the cloud now as well. And so it isn't just an either-or choice, it's quite a matrix when people start sitting down and saying, so for the next 5 years, what do we want to do for our telephony structure, and along with that, our messaging and call control structure. When people look at Skype for Business, they're pretty cautious usually. They usually do a test bed of some type. And even if they look at it and say, yes, this works for us, almost no one's going to do a flash cut over a weekend or even over a month and take out everything they have and go to Skype. Quite typically, you're going to see it deployed a little bit at a time. I'm going to start with that new office I'm opening up and put them on Skype for Business and let that run for 6 months and see what kind of issues we have, see how our network stands up, see how easy it is to support. And then as we retire other assets, perhaps we'll do that. Or in some cases, it might just be status quo. We'll just keep going forward with what we have, but for new places, we'll use Skype. The end result is an awful lot of Skype deployments need to connect to the traditional world. They need to be integrated within the traditional world. And that is one of our real strengths, because obviously we come from the traditional world. What we've done is made our product work in a Skype environment just like it works in any other environment. So if you look at kind of the architecture of what we've done, and this is unique, by the way, no one else offers this today, we have figured out a way to sit behind Skype when it's acting like a PBX, Skype for Business Enterprise Voice, sit behind it just like we sit behind a PBX. And that's not an easy thing to do, hence no one else has done it but us, I think. And the reason is, while you can get a SIP trunk into Skype very easily, Skype doesn't trust that SIP trunk. It'll answer a call from it, and that's about all. When it comes to transfer or for reading call header information, it just doesn't let a standard SIP trunk do that. What we discovered is, in order to really do that, you have to create on Skype what they call a trusted application. So that SIP trunk now is a SIP trunk from the traditional communications point of view, but it's also got extra features that let you do things like answer a call, transfer a call, forward a call to voicemail, things that other people can't do. And that's what we've done. So our product now sits behind the Skype server, connects to the front-end pool, and acts as if it were behind a PBX. But it has all those extra features built into it from the trusted application that let us basically function much, much more integrated than anyone else can. Now, the whole reason for doing this is if you didn't use our product, your only other choice in a Skype for Business environment for voice messaging, call processing, automated attendant is the Exchange UM function. And Exchange UM, while it's gotten a little better over the years, is still a fairly weak product. It has some fairly serious shortcomings, some of which are absolutely showstoppers we'll talk about, and some are just, it's not quite as powerful as even the older legacy voicemails is. So the goal for us here is for customers who are looking to move to Skype for Business, we want to be able to enable all of the solutions we provide, both to get the extra solutions, but also to solve some of those deployment problems that you're going to come across in a Skype environment. So, of course, Microsoft has made this all much more complex and confusing by moving Skype around a bit and reusing the name a bit and restricting some things and now turning some things off. So if we look at Skype, there's a number of ways that Skype could be deployed. When it started from a telephony platform, it was an enterprise product. Everything went on the enterprise. That's where we developed our application. That's where the trusted app connecting to the Skype pool came into use for the first time. And that's fine. That's what most of our customers are using right now. But as Office 365 got popular and people wanted to kind of offload that functionality up into the cloud, and there's a lot of people who've done that. Office 365 is extremely powerful, and you could get Skype in the cloud. You couldn't get telephony in the cloud. They wouldn't allow you to connect to it, connect to Exchange UM or Exchange Online like they did everywhere else at first. Later on, they opened that up with by providing a gateway, and that gateway allowed people to connect their legacy PBX or through a SIP trunk gateway, a PBX, to use Exchange Online just like they would have used Exchange on the enterprise. And of course, to further confuse that, they have now announced the end of that support for the Session Border Controller. We have a whole nother webinar for that. If you find yourself in the position where you're using Exchange Online with a local traditional PBX, you undoubtedly by now have been told you have, I don't know what it is now, somewhere around 10 months or so to come up with a different solution because they have discontinued that. And that is making people very nervous as well about the whole future for Exchange UM, because they're really trying to get people to move to the cloud, and you kind of wonder how much effort they're going to put in the enterprise version of Exchange UM, since that's not really their primary market. But for people who want to use Exchange Online and people who want to use Office 365, we work in that hybrid environment fine. And if there are questions later, we can certainly talk about that. Basically, we still connect to the on-site Skype server, and it does all the connections upline for us. In that particular hookup, all the phone traffic remains locally to the enterprise. In other words, Skype phone rings, it forwards to our CX product, a message is taken. There's no need to connect a phone call. What happens then is our CX system puts the message up into Exchange, so only the message gets moved across the link, not the entire phone conversation. But of course, coming out about almost 2 years now, I guess, ago, with the Cloud PBX, they further complicated this. Originally, people thought that was Skype in the cloud, but it turns out it's not. It's a third product, completely different product. You have Office 365, you still have Skype, but you now have the Cloud PBX. The Cloud PBX does not have the same feature set as Skype Enterprise Voice, and it basically can run in a hybrid model, but we really can't run. If anybody's using the Cloud PBX today, we're not quite there yet. We have an integration cooking. We can't use the Trusted App integration. They don't support Trusted App on Cloud PBX the same way. So we are building one of those. And even with the Cloud PBX, if people are going to go ahead and use it fully in the cloud, we will have an integration. But today we're going to talk about Skype hybrid and Skype on-premise. And in a lot of cases, the first customer conversations we have are about, where we're going. What we have today, which will typically be a traditional PBX environment of some kind. We are interested in Skype. We want to move to Skype. Let's talk about what first steps are, how we get there. And we just have a great story to allow a customer to run a test bed perhaps, get comfortable with it, run a small location, all their existing traditional PBXs and their Skype implementation all tied together in one centralized system. Makes it much easier to maintain, doesn't cut off groups of users by putting them on a separate platform that really isn't connected the same way. So this is one of the advantages we bring to the table if you're looking at moving into Skype, is our ability to kind of let you step in slowly, get your feet wet and get comfortable before you really start putting massive amounts of traffic on it. And if you look at how this would work, it's pretty straightforward. We will go into a customer And quite often that customer has a legacy replacement they want to get rid of, legacy voicemail. They want to get rid of their modular messaging, still some call pilots out there, even still some octels out there. And so they know they have to do that, but they know they're going to Skype. So we sort of set up a staged migration where they replace their legacy voicemail system with our CXE system connected, let's say, to the Avaya PBX or whatever PBXs they have. We can connect to multiple PBXs at the same time, different types, different software levels. Then as the Skype units get deployed, those connect into that unit. Maybe they're already in place for IM and presence, and then they start slowly migrating users over. And that migration process can not only take as long as it needs to, but it could also not be a full migration process where the legacy equipment might be kept online for years to come. So any kind of mix of traditional PBXs and Skype as the telephone system, we're going to be able to deal with. And the whole reason you have to take a look at this has to do with issues with Exchange UM. And there's a couple of them we're going to talk about here. And the only reason you really have to know about this is because there are some things that you really wouldn't expect to be a problem until you get to putting messages in the Exchange UM. We let you put messages into Exchange UM if you want, or into Exchange with our product. We also let you not have messages be stored in Exchange. And that's actually the biggest piece. So we've been doing voice messaging, like I say, for 35 years. I don't know of any features we don't have, just because this product, from the day we started working on it, we've been adding to it. We never had to sunset a product, so that makes it by far the most feature-rich product out there. And we have things like alternate telephone user interfaces. So if you're going to move from a traditional legacy system like a Serenade, an Intuity, an older Centigram or a NewPoint system, even a modular messaging or an Aura messaging system, we have the user guides, or excuse me, the user interfaces that will let you do that without disrupting your business, which is a fairly important piece. We have all the features those other systems have, plus we're a leader in the newer features as well. And we aren't going to talk too much about features here. We have, once again, webinars for that. But we are very comfortable that if you move from a legacy system to our system, that you won't feel any loss at all. And most people will be picking some features off the menu to add when they move too, because there's an awful lot of new stuff that would be available. Possibly the biggest thing we talk about in these customers is secure messaging. So secure messaging really covers a couple of areas. Confidentiality is a big one. And if you're in an industry covered by HIPAA, which is healthcare, FERPA, which is higher education, Sarbanes-Oxley, you have some issues, not as much confidentiality as compliance, but all of those, there's concern with where voice messages go. And what we've set our system up to do is certainly store voice messages and email for those people and companies that want that. But for those that don't, the voice messages can be left on our system and accessed with our secure clients. And our secure clients basically let somebody play a message. They can obviously get to it by calling over the phone, but they can also get to it from our web client and our mobile client. And so we have nice graphical interfaces. They can forward those messages to other people in the system, but they can't get them out of the system. We use combinations of streaming technology and things like that, such that good access to the messages, but high protection, so those messages won't get out of the system. And then from a security point, we support TLS and SRTP, so the wire can be secured. As of our next version of software, we support encryption when the message is at rest on our server. We have a great password policy that's much stronger than traditional telephony systems. So we really are in a position for those people who really feel they have to move off of a legacy system and would like some of the new functionality available on the unified communication system, but have a concern for some or all employees in terms of message security. We have the best solution for that out there. We are recognized as a leader in unified messaging. We've been doing it years longer than anyone else. Gartner will tell you we are the best of breed out there. And so whatever client you have, whatever email system you have, multiple email systems, multiple Exchange servers in separate domains, Exchange moving to Office 365, Exchange moving to Gmail, whatever your solution set is, wherever you're going, our product's going to be able to fit into that mix without a problem. And we have all the tools to do unified messaging better than anyone else. And from a call processing point of view, you will also find Exchange is extremely weak. And it's been extremely weak since it came out, and they really haven't added anything to it. They don't really appear to be changing Exchange going forward. So you have to be able to live with those pieces that are there. And a lot of people have problems with that, particularly people that are coming from a legacy call processing system or from a phone system using vectoring that are doing fairly complex call routing. That is not what Exchange does. Exchange has an automated attendant, both DTMF and speech driven, but it really just transfers calls. It doesn't really have any more power than that. And it's awkward if you set it up. You can't have speech commands and DTMF commands in the same directory, so you have to move people to different directories depending on what they're trying to do. It's got very limited support for customers that have different locations in different time zones or just want a very robust holiday where menus change a lot. It really doesn't support that very well. It doesn't do speech rec as good because it has a limit of 2 alias names, and depending on who you are, you might need Robert Johnson, Bob Johnson, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Robert Johnson. You might need more names than that. And it really doesn't use speech for the commands, just for the name entry. So the user experience on Exchange is just not very friendly, and the skill set is just not very useful. So we find a lot of people that are going to struggle with that. So going to our system beforehand, even if they're going to store their messages in Exchange, which we do fine, they find that the front-end piece just doesn't meet their needs. Particularly when you start looking at campus environments with multiple locations, or even more so, a company with 6 cities in 3 time zones. We're great for unifying all that into a single system, as most companies are doing with their telephony infrastructure. We're great with that, but you'll find serious shortcomings if you try and use Exchange where you can't have partition directories, you can't have different answering announcements and time zones. Not only the 3 or 4 departments you might need on one site, much less across multiple sites in multiple time zones. As we talk about mobility, which is everyone should be looking at mobility as they look at any unified communications application today, we have a great feature set there that actually integrates into the Microsoft environment better than Exchange does. It does things like takes advantage of your Skype presence status to change how your calls are routed. Or it reads your Exchange calendar to change the greeting we play to callers and to change how your calls are routed. Or if you're in a meeting in Exchange, you can arrange for a silent pop-up to show who's calling while you're sitting in the meeting. So you don't interrupt the meeting, you can hit a button and actually play them an announcement. Neil Butler is in a meeting and unavailable, and we'll call you back in 10 minutes, let's say, or whatever button you press. So we've not only compensated for the pieces of Exchange that are not really up to par, but we've gone further in the front-end apps of call routing and advanced call completion to take advantage of the Microsoft infrastructure. We've gone further than their products do. So we generally find if we get a chance to sit down and talk with a customer who's looking at moving in that Skype direction, there's a pretty good chance we're going to be able to convince them that if the Skype move is right for them, great, but probably we're a better choice than the Exchange piece for them. One of the pieces that comes up in Skype very quickly, and this is partially because it's new, I guess, but it doesn't really have the same kind of features that a PBX has. For instance, the hunt groups aren't really hunt groups. They have something called response groups. And they're interesting. They're highly programmable, and they do some very interesting kind of niche applications, but they don't really meet most customers' needs. And we find that's another area that because of our product TeamQ, we can actually kind of fill that need. It's not a contact center. It's not a full-blown call center. If you have a real call center, Skype's not going to do that for you either, but you're going to go with a third-party product. But if you need a little less than that, our TeamQ application actually is extremely popular with the customers moving to Skype as well. And if you think of TeamQ as kind of an informal call center that uses an agent pull model for call control, In other words, we're going to answer those calls. We're going to talk to the customer, find out who's calling and why, ask them up to 4 different questions, display the information from those answers on a screen so an agent, when they get off a call, can look down at that screen and decide what the best call for them to take is. So for informal call centers where the feature sets or the skill sets are disparate, not everyone takes the same kind of calls, that it's an excellent product to do that. So overall, for people who are looking at Skype, and no matter how they're looking at moving in that direction, we find that given a chance to talk to them, we can enhance what their Skype experience will be. We can make it easier. We can make the transition less painful because we have those alternate telephone user interfaces. We can give them more functionality because we have a better integration into the Microsoft product. We have a much wider set of applications that we can ask. Probably the biggest one, though, is the confidentiality and compliance. If you really can't or don't want to store your messages in the Exchange server, whether that's legal reasons or just concern over confidentiality, you really can't use Exchange There's just no way to do that. And that tends to be, when that's the case, and the customers go back to Microsoft, Microsoft will send the customer to us. We're the only other solution that can go into this environment, and we do solve that problem completely. So questions?
All right, thanks very much, Neil. We do have a few questions already submitted here. And just so that you're aware, if you've got your presentation screen full screen, use the orange arrow in the upper corner to expand and find the question box if you're looking for that. Okay, Neil, first question. Is the per user cost for comparable to Microsoft pricing?
So it's hard to say because Microsoft has a bundled pricing model where you're going to get a class of license that gives you 4 or 5 things, and will be bundled in there. And if you have that license already, then you actually technically own already. So you might not even see a separate license cost. On our side, there's 2 things to consider. First of all, many of our customers who are coming to us because of the message security use our secure unified messaging, which has no cost. Comes with so the way we license our product is different. We license it primarily on ports. So let's say you figured out you need a 48 port system. You can put as many users on that as you want, and all of them can be configured for secure where the users get their messages from our mobile client, which is free, and our web client, which is free. And they have those secure access to messages that way. There's no charge. Now, if you do decide for some or all users, you do want to store messages into Exchange, then there is an individual user license. And that license probably, bought in the smallest quantity falls somewhere around the $20 a user. Now that's a one-time license. That's not a renewable every year license like Microsoft and Cisco and a lot of those other people. So we generally don't have any issues with what it costs to get into unified messaging, no matter which type is appropriate for a customer.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Next question. We have O365 for Exchange and Skype for Business conferencing, but no Skype for Business on-prem or cloud PBX. PBX is Avaya with existing CXE. Can we integrate our CXE with Skype for Business for at least presence?
Yes. Yeah. Even though Skype for Business is in the cloud, we can do the presence piece. That API works fine. And keep in mind, we can also, if you're using Office 365 in that environment, and for some users you want to store messages in Exchange, we can do that as well. And the way we do that is we use the Exchange Web Services interface, which is the same interface you would use for an on-site Exchange server, to deposit and retrieve messages up into the Office 365 message store.
Okay, next question. Does AVST make recommendations about where to store the voice messages?
So we don't do recommendations, we do discussions. We've gotten to the point where, from a technology point of view, the messages work pretty well, whether we store them on our server or you put them in Exchange. There's a little bit of, for some customers, depending on what kind of connections they have to Office 365, there's a little bit of concern over message lag sometimes, and it just depends on what center you're coming out of. But that's gotten a lot better in the last year or so as well. So this is more about how concerned you are about the security of your messages. And I would say, let's say we go into a large healthcare organization. They have 8 hospitals. We're going to tie it all together. It's a very typical environment for us. What a lot of customers would do would be for anyone that has patient information, likely in their voicemail, so the nurse's desk, the doctors themselves, counselors, anybody like that, they would use our secure messaging and leave the messages on our side. For the IT department, management, operations, people that don't really deal with patient information at all, they might choose for those users to have their messages stored on the Exchange server, because it does make it a little easier. You now get it from Outlook Web Access. If you're using Exchange ActiveSync to push your messages to your mobile phones, you still get them on your mobile phones. So it's more of a discussion about what we can do than us actually saying we'd suggest you go this way or that way. Sometimes these are legal questions, and so we really hesitate to put ourselves forward as an expert on any kind of legal opinion at all.
Okay, next question. Integration to Centrex or major cloud PBXs, or does it have to be an on-site PBX?
Centrex is fine. We have hundreds of thousands of users probably on Centrex. We've been doing that for almost that entire 35 years that we've been in business. Major cloud PBXs, most of them we have integrations to. Basically, if the cloud PBX, and there's 2 pieces here. There's manufacturers of the servers that cloud PBXs use. So if you look at BroadSoft as an example, we have an integration with BroadSoft, work with their engineering group. It's a fantastic integration. But if somebody buys a BroadSoft switch for their center, so now I have Neil's hosting center and I'm going to have the BroadSoft switch in there, it's really up to me whether I allow those connections. We can work with that switch, but it's a matter of whether that provider will open up those ports for the SIP connections. So far, most of them have. So we don't really expect that very many of them are going to try and discourage that. So if you want to get together with us offline and you want to give us the actual details of who you're talking to, we'll be glad to do the research to find out if whatever center you're looking at is something we can connect to.
Thanks, Neil. Next, can AVST offer announcement-only mailboxes with personalized announcements for users who don't need fully functional voicemail?
Sure. Yeah, we have an announcement mailbox that can be assigned such that an individual user can call in and change that announcement anytime they want. When that announcement is done, you can have it set up to simply hang up or to go back to the main menu or whatever else you want the system to do. And those are also unlicensed, so you can have as many of those as you want.
Okay, thanks, Neil. I'm just doing a quick scroll here. There is one question. Someone was just asking about the slides, so I'll remind about the slides. You can grab those from the handouts area on the webinar panel, and we will also send them in a follow-up email later today along with a link to the recording of this. And so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. We'll hope to see you on another webinar at some point. I will also include a link to the webinar page that we have for upcoming webinars in case one of the topics coming up is interesting to you. We're actually going to be covering the unified messaging topic in a little bit more detail, I think, in a webinar it's sometime in September. I don't have the date off the top of my head. I think it's around the 20th. So look for that as well. And then I'll go ahead and let Neil close us out.
Thank you, Ann. And I just extend my thanks as well. Thank you for attending. And these webinars are for you. So you should give us feedback and tell us if there's something you'd like to see us do different. I guess if you're perfectly happy with them, you don't have to give us feedback. But if you'd like more detail, less detail, additional topics covered, we would love to hear that. And all you need to do is send an email to info@avst.com, and you will find us extremely responsive to that. So thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.